Hey YouTubers, I wanted to talk about education and our schooling system in America and industrialized countries, and hopefully shed some light on why some of us aren't quite fond of the system, and why some of us even say we hate school, and why, how all this plays out. I remember reading was like that school is kind of like a classical conditioning in a way, like you go to school and you spend 7 hours there. Well, that kind of like gets you into a habit because like, oh, I was reading this book lately. It's called Evolve Your Brain. And it talks about how all of human thought is like repetition of thought, or all of human action is repetition of action. Therefore, when like you do an action and you repeat that action, that you'll trigger all the same brain chemistry, which will influence your health and everything you do and your decisions in life. And pretty much all actions are based on the habit. Okay, and some of you must be thinking, well, you must hate school because you hate learning, um, and I guess, well, it's not always the case. Like, some people actually like dislike school because like, it inhibits or it takes away their time, it takes away their energy. So when they go to school and then they come back home, that they're all tired and stuff, and so they can't work on the things like they do. Like, I know a lot of kids who are like good at arts and like can draw all these crazy stuff, but like they're not facilitated. If we take this classical conditioning theory a bit further, we kind of run into a conspiracy theory in a way. Because, like, think about it. Like, oh, I forgot the psychologist who came up with this idea that, like, they probably pretty much had, like, a dog, and then they rung the bell, and then they were able to get the dog to salivate just by ringing the bell when the food was brought, just because the dog knew that the food was going to bring. Well, there's, like, the conspiracy theory goes, like, well, it's not really because it actually happens. Anyway, so, what happens when like people go to school and when they get bored? Every single time I used to go to high school, and then everyone was always bored. Everyone was always, oh, I haven't got school. Oh, I got homework. Everyone was always bored. They weren't in the learning mood. They weren't interested. They weren't curious. See, that's the other thing. Like, when you're little, you're always curious about stuff. You always want to learn more. You always want to learn more. That's why kids like run around all over the place because they're just exploring. But like, I personally think that schooling takes away from this little inner drive that the people have, and like and that's what makes them like not interested in learning, because they, through classical conditioning, they associate learning with boredom, because they associate learning with school, and they associate school with boring. So if when you associate school with boring, you get boring associated with learning. But that's just the way they want us, because if we're not knowledgeable of politics, if we don't have critical thinking skills, if we don't like validate our sources when we come up with our ideas, our beliefs and stuff, then we're easier to manage. The other thing that I thought was super fascinating was that the Prussians used this educational system at its full potential. Like, they realized that, you know this this form of education is really great for the masses, because it's what keeps our hierarchy in place. It's what keeps the commoners from listening to the top, which is great for a military structure, because like when you have this military structure, you have like the, just the order, and just the it's quite interesting. So when people say that, oh, schooling doesn't really teach people, it just it's just more of a social conditioning, they're in a way kind of right, because that's kind of what it's meant to do. It's not meant so much for learning, because I don't care if you learn. All the tests and stuff, they're like based around passing the exams, and which is just based on listening to the teacher. It's most, you don't have any of this. They don't care if you learn the material or not. It's like you're done with the chapter, you go on. It's like because that's why they have like the bell ring every hour. It's because once you get immersed into the topic, so you can actually start learning about it, the bell rings and you're on to the next class, and it's like, so you're getting pummeled with all this information all at once, and then pretty much it's like all irrelevant, because math has nothing to do with English, or at least that's the way it's taught in the system. So I guess a while ago I was like doing some research on this. I was like, wonder where public education originated from. And like I guess I was able to trace it back to, well, actually it dates all the way to back to ancient Greece around what is it, 2500 BC or so. The Greek version of education, that compared to our modern day version of education, was that in Greece, schooling and leisure time are actually synonyms. Isn't that crazy? Leisure time, you think of, oh, relaxation. I guess I guess the reason they called it leisure time back in ancient Greece because it was like leisure time was the time where like the kids or the teens or they would just walk around and they would just discuss stuff with philosophers and you know and we're talking about Greece. We're not talking about like some undeveloped country. We're talking about the leading. Yeah. So if you guys want to check the site out, like I found just go on the link and you'll be immersed in the perspective. I gotta say first, it's a bit emo, so like if you'll get used to it. Yeah, 'cause.